right, it's now 25 minutes to 7 o'clock, and it's time for us to review the dailies and look at what's making headlines on the dailies today. And joining me to have that conversation, we have Brian Mutie, who's a governance, peace and security expert. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Mike.
Let's dig in straight into the dailies. And we start off with the Standard, where you've already seen the headlines, but in case you haven't, the headline is How Rich Criminals Buy Police Protection. Now, this is just a follow-up to a story that has been going on now for the last 2 days or so, and this is in regards to one Ali Punjani, who is thought to be a drug lord. And this is not something that's starting now, but apparently 19 is the number that has been placed as the number of security officers. And these, we're talking about police officers, yes, who are at his place, basically securing his property and protecting him and his people. 19.
The question is whether they were aware that he's a drug baron or not. If they knew that he was a drug baron, then I think we're in a sorry state. Because
but even if they did know he's a drug baron, yes, on what grounds would a Kenyan citizen have 19, yet he is not a government official? Well, he's not one of those who come under who'd require protection.
Well, normally when you need security, I think you can subscribe that through the National Police Service, and of course at a pay or at a fee.
At a fee.
And I don't think the amount that's required to get the 19 for Pujani is anything, it's just a pocket change for him. So he can get even as more than 100 if he wishes. But the problem is, if they knew that he has, suspicious activities surrounding issues related to drug activities, then it would be unfortunate.
But knowing or not, Brian, yes, the thing is, if he is indeed a suspected drug lord, how would the police who are guarding him, the people who are given the mandate and, part of the responsibility to investigate and root out criminals, be the very ones protecting? So even if he was able to afford by virtue of the fact that he's a businessman, shouldn't there be telltale signs that possibly would have revealed there's something fishy, unusual or fishy?
I think it boils down first of all to two things: corruption and also the issue of underpayment of the police service. Although that now takes away the patriotism out of the police officers who are, if they were aware of those activities happening, I think it would be unfortunate. But anyway, this is Kenya, and I think we need to read away that slogan that anything can happen in Kenya. I think this is beyond the normal operations of our police service. And Matiang'i, I think to me, is doing a very good job trying to go to the core activities of drug-related issues at the coast, especially, which has been, branded as one of the hottest transit, pathways across the Atlantic, across the East Africa and the Horn of Africa. And I think the high time that these drug barons know that the moment they engage in these activities of drug-related issues, they are robbing this country of its youth. Because when you go at the coast and see the zombie-like youth, the way they look like, I think it is a sad story.
It's very
unfortunate. And
you would
never want to see your son going through the process that those youth normally go as a result of drug abuse.
And of course, this is a story that we are following very closely of businessman Ali Punjani, and we do know that, he's been accused of possibly handling or peddling drugs, but that's a story that's on the Standard. But also on page 6 of the Standard, following up with the same story, there's a story there that is captioned, "Police make little progress in drug probe." And this might be the fear of many Kenyans that despite all this razzmatazz and drama and all this information, will we get a conviction? Will they get to the bottom of those drugs? Because even if he's still suspected to be a drug lord, drugs were actually found in his house.
If they were found in his house, I think in improving criminality, culpability or criminal culpability to an individual, sometimes it becomes a very tricky one in law. And cases of pinning somebody specifically, related to that particular catch of a certain batch of drugs, it becomes a bit tricky. Because when you look at history, all the drug barons who have been captured and convicted, the statistics are very minimal. And apart from Akasha, which still proves to be a huge problem, for them to be proven that they have been they have been dealing with the drugs in Kenya until the case was taken outside this country. It becomes because these people are loaded in terms of money, and they are able to, circumvent through the situation, through bribing, and even wading through the whole system, even through the police investigations, the judicial system, and even the political class. If they are able to use their money to pacify their situation, then it becomes very hard to pin them down.
And of course, we do know that some of these things do happen. If anything, that the Akashas had to say is to go by, because they say they literally compromise the police system, the investigative system, the judicial system,
even the political class.
And I mean, I think it is no secret as well that for these drugs to get into the country, normally they're very, very highly placed people who are involved within.
Exactly, and that's why we are saying our border patrols somehow are wanting, because by the time a consignment comes to the coast or to docks at the coast, it has to go through rigorous processes for clearance. And by the time that cargo has seen its way to the people, there must be a lot of compromises on the way, and that involves the issues of customs, the issues of the police and the surveillance, and also whoever is involved in anything to do with the clearance and the forwarding and the clearance companies. They are all involved in this. It's a sort
network.
of
it's a network and a cartel.
Absolutely, and it's very hard to pin it down.
All right, still on the front page of the Standard, a different story, and this is one that we have also been following up on. Remember, yesterday on Political Point, we were talking about the cash crunch that counties have experienced as they continue to have a standoff between the National Assembly, the executive, and county government, and this is in regards to the Division of Revenue Bill. But now the story that is here is on page 8. Patients suffer as county workers begin go slow. We did mention this, I think, even with you, Brian, in regards to what we are likely to be staring at as a country with the Division of Revenue Bill, disagreement between Senate and the National Assembly, and 19 billion in question. But there you go. Go slow beginning in counties.
Absolutely, and I saw this coming, because when you look at the works of counties, somehow it looks a little bit nascent. Sorry to say that, because when governors took power, most of them came with their cronies, and these cronies were just chief campaigners and the local villagers who, some of them, do not understand how to run a county in a professional way. And some of them were planted in key offices within the county administration. And therefore you realize that even the runnings of a key docket such as finance, you realize that the people who are there are rudiment in terms of profession. They do not understand how to run a county. But sorry, because we have found ourselves there. But going forward, I think, as I said before in our previous discussion here, Michael, it's important that we tighten the nuts in terms of how we can come up with a good, monitoring and evaluation framework, accountability framework, to ensure that our resources at the counties do not go just to the pockets of few individuals. I'm sorry to say that when you go to some of these counties which we are looking a little bit, backward, right now you find that there is a lot of mushrooming business in real estate and so on and so on. And when you ask who are the owners of these buildings around here, you are told these are county government officers. So that lack of good mechanism, strategy, and the framework to ensure that there is financial or physical prudence, that's lacking. And therefore, the role of the national government on the counties, I think it's something that needs to be relooked to ensure that financial prudence is exercised. Because when you leave these counties the way they are operating, I'm sorry to say that we are going to enrich very few, but the very, very resources that are supposed to go to the people on the ground will be missing. But there's also the issue of cash crunch.
Page 4 of the Standard.
Page 4 of the Standard. You realize that when you look at some of the devolved functions of the counties, most of them are going without even development allocation, because most of the funds are going to what we call recurrent expenditures, just paying the workers. But again, now we have come to a point where now the workers are not being paid, which is another dilemma for the counties. How do we go forward? I think we still need to look at that framework. How do we apportion prudence in terms of cash flow for these workers so that they are, catered for adequately. A situation where worker is not paid at the end of the month, that's a sorry state for any government entity.
And they have a right to actually, go out on the streets to demand
demonstrate.
their rights.
In fact, that's the worst thing that a worker can undergo. Where a government that you are looking into, you have confidence in that government that mshahara ya mfanyikazi wa serikali haichelewi, but you find yourself in the same situation. It's a sorry story.
Very, very sad state. But also still on page 4, there's also another story there which is a follow-up to what's happening in the counties, and the Attorney General Kihara Kariuki will advise whether counties can access at least 50% of their shareable revenue pending enactment of the contentious legislation. And at least this would somehow go to easing the pressure for them to be able to pay. But the Attorney General has to pronounce himself. The acting National Treasury CS Okuria Tani has said that he thinks that it should be possible for them to access 50% of the funds as they wait for the Division of Revenue bill standoff to be resolved. But again, waiting for the AG. That's what's pending.
Very important. If he's going to be Solomonic on this issue, it will be very, very wise move, because counties are suffering. I'm sure counties, I've seen counties where counties are just remained like ghost offices. Nothing, no activity happening, nothing happening whatsoever. And people are just there saying that we are waiting for our dues and nothing is happening. When you look on the ground, when you go to the ground, there's nothing completely happening. So you wonder, are we really on the right trajectory when it comes to the functions of our devolved unit? Or we are missing something within the functions in terms of cash flows? There's something that we are not getting right, Michael, and that is an issue that needs to be addressed. But when the acting AG, the AG advises on the way forward on whether it will be important to allow counties to access 50% of their funds, I think it's going to be a wise move, because right now I'm sure of people who have done several projects in the counties, and up to now they have never been paid. In fact, they are talking about 3 years down the line having done consultancy works, doing some of them are contractors who have done massive jobs within the counties, but they are still languishing, chasing after these money, but it's not forthcoming. And wherever they knock the doors of these counties, they are being told, oh, we are still waiting for the government
to trickle down from national government.
And it becomes such a long wait for them.
What would also be unfortunate, and maybe just to hear what your take is on that, is the fact that if they only release 50%, looking at the amount of money that our recurrent bills on counties are, chances are there will be very little, if any, that will go towards development. Most of it will probably go to paying salaries.
Pay salary, clear some small debts around there, and still the cyclic problem still continues until counties are properly funded. I'm sorry to say that the situation will still remain dire, because the 50% you are talking about still will find some gaps that need to be filled, that have already been created before. And again, we have to move forward with the development agenda of the counties. This development agenda need funds. The CIDPs are there to be implemented. These are the county integrated development projects or programs. And once the CIDP is set, this is the blueprint which the county implements within that fiscal year or financial year. The moment you deny them funds, then they are just between hard and rock.
A rock and a hard place. All right, so we'll wait and see whether that will be resolved. Yesterday, we did have the county government appointees who were appointed to have a mediation team, have talks with the National Assembly appointees as well. And we're yet to hear what their resolve was, if there was any, and whether we can expect to see some money going to the counties in, sooner than later. Page 8 of the Standard has census headache for constituencies that risk being done away with. We have the census coming. It has been highly publicized, but of course there are quite a number of headaches that come with it, but also the politics of census.
Very interesting. This is an area where I'm so passionate about because I at once participated through a consultants that had been given to me by Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. And I want to say that the headache of constituencies is that risk being done away with. These include Saku, Bundalagi, and also one called Mvita. These are some of the outstanding or glaring counties that have been there or have stayed there despite this risk. But I want to say there are other dynamics other than just numbers. You know, there are counties which are very strategic. Like when you talk about Mvita, which is actually the center of Mombasa County, how would you want to wish Mvita away simply because the numbers are lacking? But of course, the demographics are very different. When you go to Saku, which is in Marsabit, and I think this is the headquarters of Marsabit as a county, you give it to them because the pastoral community is not as large as the other, counties. So because of their limited numbers, I think you just need to excuse them and let them be, because how do you touch Saku, which is the heart of Marsabit County? That is a no-go zone. The other one is Bundalagi. Of course, it has its own, geopolitics and so on and so on. So I think it is going to be a huge headache. But, winding them off simply because they lack numbers, to me, is not going to be always
not a solution.
They need also to factor other parameters that they need to base. There's also the county constituency called Kaiti, where I come from, and I happen to vie for a political seat there as a member of parliament. It's also facing the same problem. But now we thank God because the numbers have increased. They have heeded the call that they need to, increase their population, and right now they are off the hook because the numbers are already above the 3,000 threshold, which has been set as the minimum that a county is supposed to, a sub-county, constituency, is supposed to have.
All right, but still on the census, of course, there are also fears for Kenyans. It is important for us to have census,
yes.
But there are some who have fears that this is where sometimes elections are manipulated, so to speak. Your thoughts on that and your comments?
Very true, because we are smarting from an experience where the Somali community issue was a big debate. And you remember us saying that it is not just about the numbers, but there are other factors that need to be factored or that come with the numbers. When you hear communities, political leaders telling their electorates that they need to give more, birth in terms of more kids, because politics and the numbers go together. It is true, because we have used some criteria like population, geographical size to determine the financial or physical allocation for that particular area. So it becomes an issue when it comes to census. So sub-counties and the counties are going to fight it to ensure that they, shine in terms of numbers, that they look like they have numbers. Even if they do not have numbers, some of them will want to try, to show that they really have the numbers. For example, you go to some of the counties and pastoral communities, or bordering some of these pastoral countries like Ethiopia and Somalia. I'm telling you that when you go to Mandera during census, or when you go to Marsabit, especially the area bordering Mandera, Ilret, at the border line between Ethiopia and so on and so on, you realize that communities move from the other side of Ethiopia to come to this other side and say, we need to be counted here because this is where our people are. And that affects. Ordinarily, when you go to those counties, you realize the numbers are not as many as they are or during the times of census. And you ask yourself why? Because numbers and the resource allocation go hand in hand.
Right? Let's wait and see. Because the other thing on census is the IEBC, which are supposed to oversee that. Yet we are not too sure whether they are legally constituted, given that there are some commissioners that resigned. And, there are questions surrounding that and whether they're really competent and able to actually carry out the census.
Absolutely. One of the roles of IEBC is a boundary delineation. And this role, as you have said, is facing another legal sort of bottlenecks, I'm sorry to say. Because when you look at the composition of IBC, it's still having some teething issues. Administratively, we do not have a CEO, we do not have a quorum, and I think it's the high time, first of all, Kenyans start talking to each other about the role of IBC. Because once we get the numbers right through the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, then we go to another step of asking ourselves, now we have the numbers. How does IBC move forward to ensure that they have the correctly pronounced boundaries within the country? And if the IBC is not, as you have rightly put it, constitutionally constituted, then it is going to be another league of, battle, push and pull, so that we can actually have a rightly placed IBC to execute its mandate. In the absence of that, then we still find ourselves in a squagmire.
And of course, knowing that Kenya has become a very legalistic country, you would not be surprised even after the census if somebody goes to court and says that the numbers they have are invalid, or for one reason or the other, since IEBC is not well constituted, then those numbers should be nullified, which would be a very expensive mistake, honestly, if it was to be done. All right, that's what's in the Standard. There's more in the Standard. You've got Hustle, a magazine that is a pull-out magazine on Wednesdays. But let's now take a look at the Daily Nation, where we have the headline as River of Poison. And this is, well, they say what you may not know, but is that water is most scarce and valuable resource, yet pollution and mismanagement have changed it from a source of life to a cause of disease and death.
Yes. Michael, remember when oil was found in Turkana? There was also good news that came subsequently in a quick fire, that apart from oil, Turkana has also discovered water. And people were like, water? Yes, water is a valuable resource that the nation has captured here. And I want to say that especially on matters of urbanization, when you do not have a proper water management mechanisms and the frameworks, you are likely to find yourself in a very dire situation. Because when you look at the situation of Nairobi, for instance, when we are talking about water being a scarce resource, then you are asking ourselves, what are the mechanisms that have been put forward to make sure that this resource is actually, taken care of? You go to countries where water is, is not even anywhere compared, in terms of scarcity, not anywhere compared to Kenya, like Israel. You find that they have robust mechanisms and the mechanization processes that have been put in place to ensure that water does not even get to waste. The water that you normally flush in your toilet, Michael, I'm afraid in some of these countries finds itself on the table or dinner table.
There's the way they recycle.
And those are some of the robust mechanisms that we need to start investing in right now, because you cannot afford, because the population is rising on every day, and the moment we just leap on this, then at the end of the day, if we do not put our house in order, we are likely to find ourselves in a situation where water is going to be more expensive. Right now, water is very expensive. It's more expensive than petrol. Yeah, you go to a supermarket, you buy a liter of water, Michael, you find it's more expensive than the petrol.
Which is very unfortunate, especially for us. And of course, we do know that Nairobi River is one of the sources, or rather a water source that we have, but one that cannot be used. A lot of water but going to waste because of the amount of waste and rubbish that is on that particular river. Well, get yourself a copy of the Daily Nation and get that story. Let's look at page 4 of the Nation. Uhuru Ruto backers differ on BBI. Another thing that we're waiting for. And BBI, of course, has been given, or were given, the mandate and the responsibility of collecting information from Kenyans as to what they would want. But it looks like we're staring at a referendum.
Yes. We actually, the road to 2022 will be quite bumpy, because there are a couple of issues that really are going to put ourselves as warring factions. I'm saying this because we have the referendum coming hot on our heels. We have the issue of BBI versus Punguza Mzigo initiative. We also have the political party alignment, new alignments that are likely to come. And these are, and the census, of course, these are all going to be huge factors that are going to contribute on how we as a country are going to gel together. It is a test for us as a country. But going forward on the issue of the BBI, I think it is healthy, first of all, that insiders within a certain political setup are able to differ in principle, not on personalities, on an issue which is such as fundamental as this one. But when you look at the issues of BBI, I think there are some questions that need to be asked about the means to the results that we are likely to see. When you look at Uhuru and the Ruto backers differ on BBI, to me, I think we are looking at a situation which is actually a precursor to also political realignments. Because by the time we come to 2022, I can tell you that people will be reading from different scripts, and they will be aligned to different political parties.
And of course, it has been said that the question is not if we're going to have a referendum, it is a question of when. But it looks like there was already a predetermined predetermined idea that there was going to be, this referendum
Yes.
at the point where the BBI was formed?
Exactly. I think, to me, from where I'm sitting, referendum is, as you have rightly put it, is when it's supposed to be held. Because when you look at our constitutional dispensation right now, the constitutional 2010, I think it has the discrepancies that are so glaring that you cannot even think about not reviewing the constitution. And every democracy at a time like this, after every 10 years of implementation of its blueprint, which is the constitution, the main one, it always takes a back seat and looks at the kind of framework that it is actually operating on, and sees on the areas, looks at the areas that it needs to somehow streamline for the betterment of good governance in this country. So Kenya is not exceptional, and it cannot afford to sit on its laurels. So the issue of constitutional review, to me, is long overdue. It's a matter of when. But the means might be somehow viewed to be different, because there are those who are looking at a different route, others looking at a different route. Some are saying punguza mzigo, others are saying even ongeza mzigo. There's also the BBI, which we are preempting because we have no idea of the content of what public participation has brought on that document. Until we are sure about what is the content of it, then we can start debating about this. Because
it may be evident that we definitely need to have the constitution reviewed, because I remember even at the point of having the constitution 2010
Yes.
Promulgated, the question, and even what many politicians said, is that pitisha tutarekebisha baadaye. So the question is that baadaye, is
Yes.
this the right time, given that we've only had about 9 years,
Yes.
going to 10 years now of the constitution, yet we've not been able to implement even what we have currently.
Exactly.
Is this the right time to go to a referendum?
Right now, we are currently implementing the constitution in the right way, that I must say, because when you look at all the key bills that needed to operationalize the constitution have already been done, save for some few which still have some teething issues, but we are almost there. But going forward, because we actually passed this constitution by 67%, 33% of the population did not approve this constitution, and therefore the teething issues that they felt the constitution was coming with are the issues that perhaps right now are affecting us in terms of implementation as a nation. But going forward, whether the constitution is serving us well or not, this constitution ought to have been made in a way that it's very hard to actually tweak it. When you go to the US, for example, they have a constitution which is only 27 which is only, I think, less than 9 chapters. One of the most dynamic, but one of the hardest in terms of review, because you cannot easily change the constitution of the US. And you can imagine, ever since the US got independence in 1776, the constitution has only been, changed only 27 times. So that's how hard they have protected the constitution. But here in Kenya, I think we have mutilated some sections here and there. We have violated several of them here and there within the short span that we have
of time
implemented it. So
Okay.
how do we go forward to ensure that we protect our constitution? Make sure that it's hard. Once we review it and get it right after this referendum, make sure that we tighten some of the loopholes, some of the provisions, to make it hard to change the constitution.
All right, and I want us to finish off with the cartoon on page 14 of The Nation, and maybe just to get your comments on that. And it's a story that has been going on for a while now, and this is to do with the Mau forest. But the reason why I love cartoons sometimes is they get a very serious message across using satire, and we're going to get that on your screens very shortly. But the Mau effect is what the cartoonist has called that, or titled that particular page 14 of The Nation, if we can have that. But yeah, the Mau forest is of course
Yes,
a debate and a discussion that has been going on for a while.
Yes, this looks like a 7-headed monster that never dies easily. Once you cut his head, another one sprouts on the other side. And I think this debate has been there with us for the last couple of years, 10 years, 15 years down the line. We are still talking about Mau. Even during President Moi's time, we were still in this debate about the Mau. It's the high time. You remember when we used to have the problem with the Aberdare forest, Michael? I'm sure you were old enough. There was a personal initiative taken by corporates, and they did fence the Aberdares completely.
Correct.
Up to now, the problem of Aberdares has never come again. The Mau problem also needs to take some sort of selflessness to ensure that you address the problem once and for all. The moment you keep allowing people to encroach the Mau, creating a political problem so that you can solve it in future and make you a kingpin, I think that's gone. That time is gone. We need to have, practical solutions to the problem of Mau. We do not want this seven-headed monster to keep on, creeping every time we are going to elections, because I'm sure this one is going to be a very hot potato in the run to 2022 politics.
Absolutely.
So it is a divisive sort of title. I mean a topic, because the Ma community is involved, the Rift Valley community is involved, and the moment we create an issue or a situation that can actually put communities which are neighboring each other apart, I think we are also sowing a seed of discord.
All right. Well, Brian, because of time, we'll have to wind up right there. Thank you very much for joining us this morning to just review the papers. Of course, there's a lot more in your dailies today, but that's where we'll reach with our review this morning. We're going to take a short break, but do stay with us. When we come back, it's time for your health. Today, we would like to look at fake news in regards to health matters and information that is out there regarding your health. There's just so much going on, and especially if we take a look at even just one ailment that we are suffering from in Kenya, that being cancer. There is so much information out there that one wonders what is true, what is not. From eating fruits that are mixed to whether you take hot water or cold water, there is the notion that sugar can also cause cancer. I mean, there is so much fake news out there. So we'd like to try and see whether we can get a better way of filtering through the information that is out there in regards to your health. For now, we take a break. We'll be right back.